Hi, I'm Joe Lennon, Assistant Professor at the Maastricht University Language Center. Welcome to my video series, 1 Hour to Improve Your Academic Writing, brought to you by the Maastricht University Writing Lab. In this video, I'm going to show you how you can refer to other sources in your research paper in much better ways than you might have been taught. And to do that, you need to learn how to escape the parentheses. Okay, what are parentheses, first of all? You've seen them before, and I'm sure you've even used them before, but you may not have known their name. It's a bit confusing because we have these guys, which are not parentheses, but very similar. These are square brackets, or as we call them in the US, just brackets. These are what I call parentheses, the round ones, but I've heard British people just call them brackets. Oh well, I'm going to call them parentheses because that's how I roll. And they are very important in academic writing because we use them to make a parenthetical citation. And I'm sure you've seen these before at the end of sentences in an academic article. And depending on which academic style you're using, different information goes in them. Here you can see the APA style, which often contains the last name of your source author and the date in which the source was published. But this video is not about how to use parenthetical citations correctly, because you've probably learned this in school already, and if you haven't, there are many, many guides and apps, etc., to help you with that. This video is about how to avoid using them, or let's say how to use them better, because I've seen a lot of problems with parenthetical citations in papers. Let me show you 3 problems I've seen. Maybe you've seen them yourself or done them yourself. Here we have a nice academic paragraph about frogs. I'm not going to spend my valuable video time reading it to you because, hey, this is a video. I suggest you just pause the video here and read it yourself. Notice we only get one parenthetical citation at the very end of the paragraph. And that's a problem because the reader doesn't know which information in the paragraph is being cited. Each sentence is making a different claim and giving different information. So, what information is coming from Williams, from our cited source? Is it the first sentence, the second, the third, the fourth? All of them? We don't know. So, that's one way I've seen parenthetical citations misused. And I've even had students tell me they were taught to cite that way. Nope. Here's problem number 2, and this time I will read the 2 examples because I want you to hear the problem. The method of loci was created by Simonides of Chaos around the 5th century BC, Young 2015. As Young 2015 states, this classical art was taught to help orators recite long speeches from memory. And the second one, according to the APA Dictionary of Psychology, the self-reference effect is the widespread tendency for individuals to have a superior memory for stimuli that relate to the self. APA Dictionary of Psychology. Do you hear the problem? That kind of ridiculous repetition of the source info? It sounds kind of silly, doesn't it? And it is silly. The reader doesn't need that same information multiple times in a row. But let's get to the third and biggest problem I've seen. And again, I suggest you pause the video here and read the paragraph yourself and tell me what you think. Okay, is this how you feel after reading it? Because this is how I feel. It's not that the parenthetical citations are used incorrectly here. They're perfect APA style citations. The problem is that all we get in this paragraph are paraphrases, summaries, and quotations from the sources. And after every sentence, a parenthetical citation. But why? Why are we getting all this information? What is the point of all this? We don't know because the author of this paragraph is totally absent. Nowhere do we get any evaluation, analysis, characterization that help us understand the meaning. And this is what can happen when you rely too much on parenthetical citations and you forget that there's more to academic writing than just citing a bunch of sources. So, I have one big tip for you that might help you avoid these problems, and it's this. Get in the habit of attributing your sources outside the parenthetical citations, in the body of the sentence. I'm going to show you some ways to do that and show you the advantages you'll get from attributing your sources in that way. Let's go back to our first example, and remember the problem here was that we don't know what information is being cited because we only get one parenthetical citation at the end of the paragraph. It's very confusing. This problem can be solved if we move the attribution, that is, the name of our source, out of those parentheses and put it into the body of the sentence. Here's one way we could do that. I've actually made two changes. The first is that I've moved my attribution, the name of my source author, up to the second sentence. And I've used this very typical attribution phrase, as Williams has shown. I call this an attribution phrase because it's a phrase that attributes the ideas in the sentence to Williams. That is, it tells my reader that what follows are Williams's ideas, not mine. And now it's clear that the sentence is a summary of Williams's findings. But that isn't quite enough because if I only did that, it still wouldn't be quite clear whether the next two sentences are Williams's ideas or whether this is my analysis or interpretation of Williams's ideas. Let's suppose that these are, in fact, my ideas, but they are my interpretation of what Williams's study means for my argument. In other words, my takeaway from Williams. And so I'm going to add the phrase, the implications of Williams's study are clear, and I'm going to stick it there in front of those last two sentences. The result, if I may say so, is now quite a sophisticated argument. I start with my main claim, then I give a summary of Williams's research findings, then I give my takeaway from Williams's findings. And so now not only have I made it clear what information I'm taking directly from Williams, but also how I'm using his ideas to build my larger argument. It would be impossible or really hard for me to do all these things so succinctly if I were only relying on my parenthetical citations. So let's start making a list of some advantages of escaping the parentheses. The first one, which I hope I've shown you, is that it makes it clear whose ideas I'm reporting, what information is coming from where, and how others' ideas and my ideas are connected. Let's go to the second parentheses problem. And if you remember, this was all this annoying repetition. So here's an important principle. If you give the name and the publication date of your source in the body of your sentence, then you don't need to also give it in the citation. And I think all the academic style guides, APA, MLA, Harvard, they all agree on this. But some writers are very nervous about getting their citations right, that they sort of forget some common sense there. And so you have stuff like this that needlessly repeats the info multiple times. I've seen this a lot. So here's how I might rewrite that first example. I'd add an attribution phrase to the first sentence. Again, something very simple is all you need, and we all know that attribution phrase, according to, okay, simple but effective. Notice that I still have the publication year of the source book in parentheses, but the author's name is now outside the citation and part of the body of my sentence. And this means that I don't need a parenthetical citation at the end of that first sentence. And it also allows me to just repeat Young's name at the start of the second sentence to signal that this info is still from Young. I don't need to repeat the year again. I just said it in the previous sentence, and everybody who's reading this will assume correctly that I'm still referring to the same source. The second example here is a no-brainer. I'm just going to get rid of that parenthetical citation. It doesn't give us any new information. The source is already named in the body of the sentence, and there's no publication date given anyway. Obviously, down in my reference list, I will have this dictionary listed as one of my sources, probably with a link to the source, so readers can easily connect this sentence with that source. There's no confusion. So let's add to our list of advantages of escaping the parentheses. The second one, it helps me avoid a lot of awkward and unnecessary repetition and weak sentence constructions. Okay, let's go to our third and final parentheses problem. And with this one, which looks like it's maybe a literature review of some kind, we have a real mess. A lot of confusing citations, and worse than that, a missing author. We don't get any sense of the author's argument here. And I think this comes from the author maybe not having a clear sense of what really they need to do in a literature review. There are multiple issues here, and I'm not going to fix all of them because I'm not sure I can fix all of them. First of all, I'm going to move the names of the source authors out of the parentheses and into the body of my sentences. All that's left in my parenthetical citations are the publication years and the page numbers of my quotations. By the way, page numbers pretty much have to stay in the parentheses. It would sound pretty awkward to have them in the sentence body. And anyway, there's no advantage to having them there. But moving the author names out of the parentheses does give me advantages. It creates space for my words around these quotations, and that means my evaluation, my analysis, my description of these sources. And that's what readers of a literature review want and need. They want to see how I see the state of the field, and they want to see my understanding of how all of these ideas and definitions are connected. And so I'm trying to give my readers that. I'm using my words to characterize these various definitions, to compare them, and bring out some interesting contrasts. And in doing that, I'm also giving the reader a sense that these researchers have each contributed something unique, something interesting to a debate about what empathy is, and that there are multiple possible angles from which to view this research field. And if there's a debate, then there's room for someone to come in and enter that debate. And that someone, my friends, is going to be me, the writer. My study, my research is going to come in and make an impact, I hope. These are the signals I'm giving the reader when I write in this way. And these signals are much, much harder to send if my references are trapped inside those parentheses. So, the last and maybe important advantage of escaping the parentheses, it creates a stronger sense of the contribution that other researchers have made, and it opens up more space for my own contribution. Okay, final disclaimer. Attributing your sources in the body of the sentence is not always the best thing to do in every situation. There are many situations where it's better to just have your sources in the parentheses. But what I have seen is that many writers don't even seem to know how to do it any other way, and they rely too much on those parentheses. And so they miss out on opportunities to make their academic writing much stronger. Of course, using words to attribute your sources means you need some vocabulary and you need some phrases, especially some verbs, verbal phrases for referring to other sources. And luckily, there is a fantastic resource for this online, and it's the Manchester Academic Phrase Bank. And they have a whole section called Referring to Sources, and they give you tons and tons of nice phrases. So I recommend that you go there, find two or three new phrases, write them down in your notes, and try to use them next time you're writing something to build that academic vocabulary. That's all for this installment of 1 Hour to Improve Your Academic Writing, but check out the other videos in the series. And if you're working on a piece of writing in English and would like to consult with me or another writing specialist, go to our website to make an appointment with us. So I'll see you at the Writing Lab.